Hello and welcome to the Sunday Guardian show by Joyeeta Basu. Today I want to speak about the G7 summit that is taking place in Italy's picturesque city of Bari, located on the Adriatic Sea. Prime Minister Narendra Modi has been invited for the summit as an observer by Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni. Now you must be knowing which these supposedly rich and powerful G7 countries are. Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, the UK and the US. The European Union is also there, but as a non-enumerated member. Now, G7 is a political and economic forum of the developed world and is apparently supposed to provide direction to the world leadership and maintain stability. Now, the 2024 summit has on its agenda Africa, climate change, Middle East, migrations, Indo-Pacific and economic security. But the big focus is on Ukraine. No surprises there. As for the G7 supposedly giving direction to the world, an interesting headline caught my eye, which actually describes the problem with the G7 2024 summit. Now, the headline was by the American digital magazine Politico, which says, 6 lame ducks and Giorgia Meloni. Now, according to the Politico, this week's gathering of G7 leaders in Italy looks more like the Last Supper than a display of Western power. I mean, it's such an appropriate description because except for Meloni, all the other leaders have one foot out of the door, be it Joe Biden, Rishi Sunak, Emmanuel Macron or Olaf Scholz. Now, unless the Democrats rig the US presidential election completely by not allowing Donald Trump to contest, Biden is most likely losing the election. Sunak is anyway losing the election to the Labour in the UK. Emmanuel Macron is in trouble in France after the right-wingers, including Meloni's party in Italy, have swept the European Parliament elections last week. Now, Macron has dissolved the National Assembly and called for snap election, which he may lose if the sweeping victory by his rival, right-wing Marine Le Pen, in the EU elections gets reflected in the national election. Olaf Scholz is in a similar bind in Germany. Justin Trudeau? Oh well, he too is not in a happy situation. Amid this, what Ukraine agenda can the G7 possibly set? The anti-incumbency against these leaders is not just because many of them are being accused of appeasing illegal immigrants. The anger against them is also because of their mishandling of the Ukraine-Russia war, which has caused major hardships for their people, pushing their economies into deep recession. Now, while the call should have been for peace, the G7 summit is instead showering Ukraine President Volodymyr Zelensky with more arms and money. Now, what makes them think that the incoming leaders will follow their ruinous path? I mean, Donald Trump certainly will not if he returns to the White House. Now, there is some speculation that the G7 leaders will once again put pressure on Prime Minister Modi to follow their line on Ukraine. Now, fresh from winning a general election and becoming Prime Minister for the third time, Narendra Modi is under no political compulsion to follow the G7 line on Ukraine. If he has been able to navigate India through the turbulent waters of COVID, the Russia-Ukraine war, escape recession, deliver a growth rate of 8% in the last fiscal, and get re-elected for the third time, he can handle the G7 too. In fact, the G7 leaders need to learn from him on how domestic requirements should decide a country's foreign policy. Now, PM Modi has gone to the G7 summit with his experience of hosting G20 in New Delhi in his second term. Now, he is at the G7 to take forward his work as the bridge builder between the global south and the global north. He is there to tell the G7 that there is more to the world than Ukraine and Russia. He is the one who brought the African Union into the G20, and that continent is on his agenda, as well as climate change, the ethical use of artificial intelligence, Indo-Pacific, peace in the Middle East, where Israel and Hamas are fighting a war. So India's agenda at the G7 is constructive. As for its bilateral meetings with other world leaders, let's discuss that another day. Thank you for watching. Until the next time.